Okay, welcome everyone to our first episode in a new series, and we couldn't have a better first guest. His name is Kyle Smith, brings over 25 years of experience in HR leadership, career coaching. You've written two books, one of them, Recruiting is Easy, and the other one, Get the Job You Love. Kyle has an MBA in HR and management and personnel administration. Just perfect fit for our first episode. So much expertise in building inclusive, thriving workplace cultures, and just you have a passion for empowering teams. I'm just excited that you're gonna, provide very valuable insights to our audience and kick this series off with a bang. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Eric. I'm happy to be here. Glad to be the first guest, too. Yeah, set the bar high today.
Set the bar high.
Yeah,
So, Kyle, actually, you have a podcast called HR Kyle.
I do.
Yeah, you had Jeremy and I on your podcast. Thank you. That was fun.
Yeah, that was a good time.
That was a good time. We'll have a link to that podcast in this as well. But you cover the gamut on human resources and people management and so on. Tell us about the podcast, when you started.
So I've been at that podcast now for about a year.
Okay.
And to your point, we really cover everything as it relates to the world of work. And in fact, our trademark for HR Kyle is we're your guide through the world of work. So anything that you might encounter as a leader, as an employee in your work life, we're going to address that topic in the podcast. Beyond that, as HR Kyle Services, which is our consulting company,
Right.
the same tagline. We're your guide through the world of work. So we're helping organizations and individuals be successful in their work lives.
Perfect. So give us some career highlights and your background.
Well, as you mentioned, I spent 25 years in corporate HR. I've held numerous roles up to and including head of HR for a couple of different companies. Worked for large and small companies as well as non-union and union organizations throughout my HR career. Over the past couple of months, I've since left corporate HR and I'm now CEO of my own company, which is HR Kyle Services.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You got the entrepreneurial bug.
I sure did. And you can relate to that.
I can relate to that.
Yep.
So why now? Why?
I've reached a point where I've done a lot of different things in HR. And when I look at where I can add, there's been a fair number of things that happened. But when I look at where I can add the most value, I think for me, career-wise, where I'm sitting now, I think I can add the most value in this role as a consultant and an advisor to others.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. And again, being a consultant with so many decades of a vast experience, just having that outside look in for organizations is a big deal.
Yeah, I like to say that there's not too many situations that I'm going to come across from a leadership or an HR situation that I haven't experienced personally in my professional career.
Right.
So I always try to bring that experience to bear. And I think the other thing that I bring to those situations is a steady confidence that no matter what the issue is, we know we can solve it. It's not just about my expertise, but I can partner with an organization or an individual to analyze the problem and come to a reasonable, successful solution.
Nice. And we're going to get into some of the things that you've experienced in your past. But so I remember the phone call. I called you and I'm like, Kyle, we have an idea for a podcast.
Yeah.
And the whole point is, we're obviously in health and wellness and really caring about the well-being of employees. But we didn't want to make it salesy, and we wanted to make it very informational and start building this community of people and professionals and companies that give a shit about their employees.
Yeah.
Truly give a shit. And you loved it.
Loved
and you're like, I love it and I want to be part of it and I'd love to be on your podcast. So that was awesome. And I appreciate it. So what Why'd you, besides returning the favor and being on our podcast, right? Because we were on
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah.
Besides return, like what stuck out? What was going through your head when I proposed it and you gave such a resounding yes?
Two main reasons, Eric. One, a lot of companies are challenged with this. They're challenged with making sure their employees know that. And a lot of companies are challenged with their employees not realizing that they actually care, that they're actually interested. And for you to propose this topic as a podcast platform, I think is brilliant because
Mhm.
there needs to be more discussion around this. And as you and I talked offline, we're not going to talk about a lot of things in this discussion or in your future episodes with other guests that anything is really radical. But we need to keep talking about these messages and reinforcing these positive messages around why do employees stay with companies? And the flip side is, why do they leave?
Right,
We need more dialogue around that so we can spread this knowledge and get more buy-in within organizations that say, we want to do the right things that keep our employees.
right. So why do employees stay at companies?
Quite frankly, one reason is they stay because the company is clearly invested in them and clearly interested in them. And I won't use the phrase for the podcast, but they demonstrate that they give a darn about their employees. That's one of the biggest reasons why people will stay.
So, in your experience, okay, well, let me rewind and then I want to go deeper into that. But so why do employees leave companies?
You know, there's a stat, and there's a lot of truth behind this. 75% or more of employees leave because of their supervisor.
Right,
And why is it their supervisor? Because that's the person that they have the most interaction with. That's the person that can most impact their happiness on the job. And it's interesting. There's some stats around this too, as well, from a mental health standpoint. So we know the biggest influences on someone's mental health. One is their partner, spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever that is, their partner.
sure.
Tied with that is their boss.
Right.
So their boss has that level of impact on that person's mental health. So we need to, as professionals, leaders, as professionals, HR professionals, and so on, we need to get these messages out to our supervisors who are having those one-on-one relationships on a day-to-day basis with their employees so that we can impact those relationships in a positive way.
Yeah. We my wife's really close friend worked for this amazing company and she had the most amazing boss
Yeah,
and she said the culture was just amazing for the company and she worked there for like almost 10 years.
exactly.
And then
Yep,
her boss left and the next boss came in and was super toxic and
absolutely.
super
Yep,
negative and micromanaged and all etc. And I mean, it it was just horrible for her. And
absolutely.
guess where she went?
Someplace else.
Someplace else to work for the boss that left
Exactly.
in the organization. It
Yep.
didn't take long. And yeah, so you know your direct report for sure does cause stress, does cause a lot in
Absolutely.
an employee's well-being. They either want to come to work and crush it
Or
or the opposite. Is
absolutely.
there
And
is there even middle ground?
there typically isn't. I don't talk to with too many employees ever that say I'm indifferent.
Right,
They either feel really good about their boss or they feel really negative about their boss. There's really never been a person that said, I ask, hey, how do you feel about your boss? Well, it's neither good nor bad. They always have an answer about their boss. They may be indifferent about coworkers, they may be indifferent about other people in the organization, but when it comes to that one person they directly report to, I guarantee you they've got an opinion one way or the other.
right,
Yeah.
right. So how, culture, right? Culture is such a buzzword and everyone talks about it, and it's really kind of hard to define, but I'm
Yep.
going to ask you to. So
So
how do you define a good company culture?
so a good company culture, and we know this, it's all going to be different. And from the standpoint of it's about a match between that employee and what's important to them in their work environment and what that employer offers. And again, every employer is going to be a little bit different. So, one of the things I talk about in my book about Get the Job You Love is do this analysis of saying, what are the things that are important to me in my work environment? Is it, a flexible work arrangement? Is it the ability to work at home a couple days a week? Is it having facilities on site where I can work out during my lunch break?
Right.
Uh, is it, all certain kinds of benefits and all of these things? So you as the individual need to take stock of what are the things that are important to you. And then to your point, those are the things that make up the work culture.
Right.
So how do people interact? What time do they get in? What time do they leave? What do they do on their lunch break? How are meetings structured? Do they start on time? Do they start a little bit late? It's all of those things that represent the culture of a company. And you as an individual, again, you're taking stock of the things that are important to you and you're putting weight on those. And that's how you determine if that's an organization that you want to work for and that you'll thrive in.
Yeah, yeah. In my decades of entrepreneurial business
Mhm.
experiences, also I've came across where leaders set out these mission, vision,
Yep,
core values, but employees don't necessarily buy in or are aligned. And so how does management, ownership, etc., cultivate that culture with employees buying into the mission and
absolutely.
the vision?
Well, you got to walk the walk. I mean, we all know a mission, a vision statement, and I even speak about this when it comes to diversity statements. It's good to have that written down and put up on a plaque somewhere, but if that's not part of how you do business, if that's not part of your processes and how people interact and how they function, then those are just shallow words. So I always say before you write that mission and vision, decide how your organization is going to function. Decide how you're going to interact with each other. What are the things that are important to you in this organization? What are the things that aren't so important to you? And once you determine that, then you can get into these mission and vision statements because it's much easier to walk the walk in that. You put words on a piece of paper and those don't resonate with you. That's not the organization you're going to have. It's just not going to happen.
And we talk about that all the time. Putting words on sheets of paper is just checking boxes. But
It's all it is.
but at the end of the day, do you really give a shit about your employees? And do
Exactly.
you want them to be fully aligned with your mission and vision? Are you hiring and firing due to your core values and really standing
100%.
behind it? Right. So can you give some specific stories of success or challenges that you faced
Yep.
with employees aligned with mission and vision?
100%. So I prefer to focus on the positives, and I had plenty of those. I came from an organization, my prior organization, something that was important to us is making sure that everybody felt like they belonged. Didn't matter where they were from, their education, what they did, and so on. They felt like they had a place that they belonged. And that was our culture. We
Yep.
we lived and breathed that. If you walked around the building as a guest, you would notice that. And you and I talked about that
Yeah, yeah.
through tour. You could feel that. And
Yeah.
that was something that was important to us because again, it wasn't just words on a paper. That's who we were as people. And it was interesting to see it because even if you would hire someone and maybe they didn't, that wasn't necessarily who they were, they had two options. They either kind of fell into that mindset or they realized the organization wasn't for them. So there's almost a self-selection process as well.
That's
But I
important.
will say,
Yeah.
and we know this to be fact, it starts at the top. And for the organization I'm referring to, it started with our CEO because that was his attitude. That was his mindset that, we're all one team here. I won't use the word family because I think that gets overused, but we're all one team here. And it doesn't matter what you look like, where you've been from, your background, all that. You're on here. You're a part of this to be part of this team.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a good feeling.
So I did some Googling
Okay.
and saw some employee feedback on Glassdoor and stuff. It was
Mhm.
really high. It was
Yep.
really high, and I got to praise you that the HR department was very approachable.
Yeah.
And I saw that many times in the comments that
Good.
they felt like they, besides an amazing work experience, but that they could approach HR
I'm
and
glad you say that because one of the things I've always told my HR teams is we have to be easy to do business with. And that's exactly what you're talking about. In HR, being easy to do business with is being approachable. You're not embarrassed about what it is you've got to talk about or what we're going to discuss. You're not uncomfortable. You feel at ease to do that, even if it's difficult conversations. And I've always tried to promote within my HR team, and I've seen it then carry throughout the organization, that sometimes, if we need to have a difficult conversation, we can do it. We can be professional because we know where we're coming from.
Right.
And where we're coming from, if it's my team, we're coming from a good place. We want you to be successful. We want you to be happy in the organization. We want you to take full advantage of the benefits that we offer and so on. So we're coming from that place. It makes any conversation we need to have pretty easy.
Yeah, and employees are super intelligent people. Like they know what's going
Yeah,
on. Why not have a candid conversation with them and tell them exactly what's going on? And
exactly.
when you're beating around the bush or not having these conversations, that's just really not great for culture.
One of the biggest complaints I've ever heard from employees, and this will surprise you, but there's data behind this. Employees like to know when they're doing something wrong so they have the opportunity to correct it.
Right.
And as supervisor or leader, like you say, you're dancing around the topic because it's uncomfortable. Well, that employee just wants to know.
Right.
Please tell me I've done something wrong because I don't want to do something wrong. I want to come here every day and do my best.
Right.
And as supervisor, it's imperative on you to let that person know how they're doing. Give them that information.
I agree. The best employees, want constructive criticism.
Yes.
And then from the other side, the best employees don't necessarily need pats on the back
Right.
because they know they're doing a great job,
Right.
but they're still nice to give
Exactly.
and they're appreciated and you should, right?
Absolutely.
So it's from both sides, whether they're doing, something that you need them to correct or they're doing amazing, which you hope they are most of
Absolutely.
the time.
Yep.
Um, so specific, culture building strategies.
Yeah. So again, it starts with the top. And I've said this especially in HR. If I'm the head of HR, I've got to be in alignment with the head of that organization in how we view people. So
Right.
first and foremost, that president, that CEO, whoever that top person is, has to have a positive viewpoint of people. And what I mean by that, and I've got the talk that I actually do called Life is a Team Game, and it speaks to these principles, but I'll share a few of them with you here. And one of them is that leader believes that every person in that organization wants to give their best effort. That leader believes that everybody there wants to be a productive, positive person in the organization. So we're starting from those assumptions, and we're then from there, we're building a culture that's built around those assumptions. Because we're leading from a positive standpoint. Because what I find is so many times leaders lead from a negative standpoint. They're looking for the person that's doing something wrong, that's underperforming. So they're on the lookout for that. And to your previous point, they're not on the lookout to say, wow, Eric's doing a great job. That's where I want to focus. And this person, they're doing a really good job. Instead, their focus is, people here are going to try to undercut the business. They're going to try to underperform. So that's their mindset, and that's where they focus. And what we find is with that mindset from the leader, guess what it does? It trickles down to the next level management.
Yes.
And eventually, what I call the frontline supervisor, who we were talking about earlier, why people leave, it trickles down to them. So they have a very callous opinion about the employees that work for them.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, we call it ripple effect.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. You can literally picture it rippling down into your organization.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so too many times it's around the specific job role and not them as human beings fulfilling those job roles and wanting growth inside the organization and wanting more.
Absolutely.
And it's more about because employees, they do want my strong feeling is they do want to produce more. They want to be productive. They want to give to the organization. It's the whole attitude of, is it about output or is it about the human being excelling?
Absolutely.
And again, like you said, being part of a team, have a strong understanding of where growth is inside the organization, are aligned with the company's goals, and that's the beauty of culture.
Absolutely. And Eric, I'll put it down to a couple of simple statements. I've yet to speak to an employee who told me I perform my best when my boss berates me, puts me down, tells me I'm doing a terrible job, is negative with me, ignores me. I've yet to come across that employee.
Right.
But I've come across plenty of employees who have said, I do my best when my boss praises me, when my boss believes in me, when my boss trusts me, when my boss gives me
Helps me,
development help,
helps me if
is
I,
there to
yeah,
support me.
yes,
I've spoken to plenty of employees who've said that. So I don't
er,
think it's coincidence.
I, I agree. Um, so how do you show your employees that you care about them beyond the KPIs and specific job titles?
One of the simplest things, and it's amazing how many employees I've had speak to me over the years complaining about their boss about this, and this is going to surprise you. My boss doesn't say good morning to me. When he or she leaves for lunch, they don't tell me where they're going. They don't check in on me throughout the day. They don't see how I'm doing. They don't ask how my family's doing. It's those little things. I hear a lot of feedback around that. In other words, my boss really doesn't take an interest in me as a person, as a human being, kind of something you were talking about earlier.
Right.
Recognizing
That's
you
gold.
as
That's really
Eric,
good stuff.
who is, has kids, has married, all of these things, rather than Eric, he runs this company, he's in charge around here.
Right.
Understanding that that's only a small facet of you. The bigger facet of you is all of these other things, and having that boss take an interest in it. And the other thing that I find that resonates with so many employees, they want to be heard. And what I mean by that is when that employee raises their hand and says, I need more training, or I'm getting overwhelmed, or whatever, they're heard by their supervisor in the sense that the supervisor, to your previous point, says, how can I help? You're saying you're overwhelmed, Eric. You're saying that you need more help. What can I do? What would you like me to do to resolve that problem? And guess what? They do one other thing this leader does. They follow through
They follow through, or they roll up their sleeves and they help.
and help out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, those few things, the big difference that makes with employees feeling more engaged, more excited about their job, and more interested. Just those few things.
Absolutely. Which completely leads into my
Yeah.
next question, your answer. So throughout your career, untraditional or bold things that you've done to show your employees that you genuinely care, not just about inside of work, but outside of work.
Yeah. There's been a lot of fun things, I don't know how untraditional they are, going and having a picnic with the group, leaving the office, getting in a new setting for a little bit and having a picnic. When we were working on a major project to move over to a new HRS system, I got everybody bracelets that said failure is not an option. That was around the whole, NASA. That was NASA's theme during the 60s. Failure is not an option. So we had those. One time in a meeting, I started off with a funny song just to kind of get everybody laughing and kind of take the edge off a little bit. So it's been those little things. I've got a good story too about an employee. It's more employee specific, but I found that it really resonated with everybody on our team. I had an employee who was a long-term employee who began to have some issues getting into work on time, and she would be late. Some days she'd call into last minute and let us know she just wasn't going to be in. So I sat down with her, and to my point earlier about looking at employees in a positive way, that's how I approached that. I said to this lady, and we'll call her Janice for the sake of this example. I said, Janice, you've been a great employee here. Never been late, been so dedicated to the company, you offer so much. Has something happened? Has something changed? Because we've seen a change in your attendance. And again, I could have very easily sat down and said, Janice, you either get straight with getting in here on time or you're out the door. I could have done that. And I know plenty of supervisors that would have. But I looked at the situation and I respected her as a person and said, there's got to be something else going on here. Because this isn't her.
Right.
And this is what I get out about knowing your employees, knowing their personal lives. Well, Janice felt comfortable enough to share with me that she was having some anxiety about driving on these highways. And I get that. I think we all deal with that from one way or another. So what we were able to do in Janice's case is we adjusted her start time with her work to be a little bit later so she wouldn't hit all this traffic. And you know what? It was a win-win because she was happy to do it.
Right.
We had no more attendance issues with her, and it allowed us to work with some of our customers, as I would call them, our employees who are on the West Coast. So we had better coverage into the evening, and it was a win-win all the way around.
Right.
But that's an example of what I'm talking about. Understanding your employees, approaching these situations from a positive standpoint, and dealing with or working with them as individuals.
Right. Which again, starts with really caring and not just
Right.
care about output and you got to be here at 9:00, et
Right.
cetera, but really caring and digging deep because
Yep.
it's what you see on the surface is never what the actual issue
Isn't
is.
that so true?
And it
Yep.
could be, issue with driving. It could also be they're not happy with their specific role
Absolutely.
and they're just on the wrong seat, but you
Yep.
might have a great other seat
Yep.
for that
I
individual.
talk to leaders about that all the time, Eric. That's a great point. One of the things I tell leaders to do is a couple things. One, management by walking around. It's an old concept, but leaders have lost that. And what I mean by that is be out in your group, know what your team's doing. So watch them, interact with them. And when you do that, look for changes. To your point, is all of a sudden the person not taking breaks, or maybe they're taking longer breaks, or they're sitting out in their car a little bit longer before they come in the building?
Right,
Those very well are triggers, again, to your point, that something's not right. Something's not right in the work circumstance. They're bored. They need a job change or whatever. And you're exactly right. By getting to know them, we may have this employee that we would have lost. They think their only option is to leave the organization to be happy. And we can tell them, oh, no, so, sir or madam, actually, if you're not having that job, guess what? We've got an opening over here that would be perfect for you.
right.
So we save that employee, they stay with the company, and they're happy in their new role.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, okay, so we're post COVID.
Yep.
A lot of employees are coming back to the office.
Yep.
Many are not necessarily happy with that. And that causes stress, that causes time, that causes, how do you proactively help employees balance work life?
Yeah, that can be a tricky one because so many situations are different. We can sit and take the easy route and say, well, we're just going to make policies. We're going to have all these policies. But policies don't manage people. You've got
Right,
to manage people's situations. You've got to give your supervisors the flexibility to manage these situations differently. And I'm not saying preferential treatment, but I'm saying manage it differently. If an individual needs to come in a little bit later to work because they're dropping a child off at school and they can come in after that, okay, that's fine. Then we flex their schedule and maybe they can work a little bit later. If they need to leave for a little bit because they've got something going on and they lose 2 hours of productivity, let's trust them that they're going to make up that 2 hours at some other point.
right,
So I'm a big one, honestly, of focusing on productivity. Is that person being productive? Do we have a well-defined job description that defines what they should be do, that has measurements in it, and how are they doing to those measurements?
that they've bought into.
Exactly.
That's
They've gone into
important.
and contributed to.
Yes,
Because we all know the person doing the job is usually the person that knows what they're doing.
right,
And many times bosses, you'd be surprised. I mean, you probably wouldn't, but many times bosses don't know everything that their employee does.
right.
So,
Or changes it up on them
oh,
every other day.
absolutely. It's a
And
moving target.
it's a moving target.
Yep.
And that causes friction, that causes stress, that causes,
And that doesn't support work-life balance.
right,
So coming back to that point, having the role defined, being clear on the measurements, allowing that employee flexibility, realizing, again, as we've talked about a few times, they've got a life outside of work. As we said before, they're a parent, they're a grandparent, they're caring for their parents possibly. They've got other obligations. Maybe they've got a little bit of a health issue that they have to resolve one way or the other. So we're understanding their circumstance and we're being flexible around that, again, with the realization that our biggest concern or our biggest measurement is, are they getting the work done that we need them to get done?
right, right. Okay. So how do you measure success when it comes to employee culture? I get it that the feeling is there, or you might
Yeah.
have this amazing culture book, or you guys had on the wall too, this
Hmm.
amazing culture wall. Would you call it?
Oh my gosh, I know what I've drawn a blank, but exactly, kind of a culture
Sorry.
wall.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was kind of all the things that we heard back from employees.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, their
That
feedback.
that wall was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to read, and it's good for them to read what others are feeling inside the organization. That was a really good idea.
I agree. And I told you too with that. I said, I tell everybody, if you disagree with anything on there, let's talk about it. I
Right.
want to know why there's a disconnect for that particular person.
Yeah.
And I think that gets back to your previous question too about how do you strike a work-life balance? You allow people to experience it in a person on a personal level. And if they're not, let's talk to them and figure it out. Why do they think we don't have a good work-life balance? And it's amazing how many times that's so easy to resolve. The person may say, I need to leave 15 minutes early some days because the traffic's bad. Fine, we can do that. That's a no-brainer.
Right.
Um, but and I apologize. Your question though, I got off track because I got excited about the wall. But your question,
Yeah, it left an impact for me as a
yeah,
visitor, so I can imagine for your employees that it seemed like every one of them contributed in some way. It was cool.
they did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it really resonated. It definitely did.
So I asked the question of how do you measure success of a culture?
A big part of it is you look at retention. If you've got high turnover, you can say what you want. There's a culture issue. There's a disconnect because I work with so many people that would just as soon get a job and stay there for a lifetime. They'd prefer to do that.
Right,
Nobody ever said, "Oh my God, I love interviewing. I love going on interviews. I love the stress of interviewing." There's nobody saying that.
right.
So if they're leaving your organization, there's a reason for it. And you need to understand because that's speaking to something about your culture. And in some cases, you just have to accept that. If you're a small organization and there aren't a lot of levels, there aren't a lot of ways to promote people to different levels, and people are leaving for that reason, okay, that's fine. You can accept that. Part of your culture is, we're kind of all here. It's kind of homogenous and there's not a lot of levels. That is part of your culture and you can accept that. But if you're an organization where you look and say, gosh, I don't know why they would ever leave, but they're leaving, that's a problem. The other thing you look at is engagement. That's another key measure. The events, the things that
Another
you're doing.
hugely broad word.
Yes, it is. But
So how do you measure
yep.
engagement?
So you're looking and saying, okay, we have these opportunities for people to do more, but they're not taking advantage of it. Maybe it's employee meetings or employee resource groups or volunteer
I love that.
opportunities or all these things, but you're doing it and you're getting a low turnout for it. That tells you those employees aren't engaged because what I found time and again, engaged employees, when you have these different initiatives, they're hungry for them because it's other opportunities for them to interact and connect with your business. So if you're doing these extra things, these other things, and your employees aren't connecting on that, that tells you they're not engaged in your business. They're wanting to do the bare minimum in association with your business.
Right.
But if they're interested and they're engaged, they're always looking for opportunities to do more. Oh, we're having an event on the weekend. Oh, I'll be there. We're doing an event in the evening. Yes, I'll be there. Hey,
Nice.
we need volunteers for this. Yep, count me in. But where you don't have that, I can assure you, you've got a culture problem.
Yeah, for sure. I would add to that, attraction's a big thing, and whether or not your employees are bringing in other people into the
100%.
business, because
Mhm.
that's always amazing to see. One of our trainers just referred another rock star trainer, and now
Exactly.
you got two rock stars, and they're not going anywhere because you know
Exactly.
what I mean? So it's like, and it adds to it, and now the other trainers are looking at it going, who do I know? Who do I know?
Exactly. Because I
And
want them to be here because I love working here. I want all my friends to work here. And then you're sitting over saying, "Whew, boy, this sure does make recruiting easy." Right?
100%.
Right.
And
And you're
reward, and
right,
we reward them too. Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And everybody wins in that scenario.
that's great. Okay, so this is going well. I love your insight. So important question. What role does personal well-being play in a company's vision of success towards its mission and core values? And
Well, great question. And we both know this, Eric, that well being really covers a lot of different topics. It's not just about the physical, it's about the emotional and the mental as well.
yes,
And if you have an employee who you're supporting from a mental, physical, emotional standpoint, they are much more likely to be engaged in your business. They're much more likely to reach their fullest potential from a performance standpoint. So it really becomes this win win situation. And again, you and I've talked about this. Making that investment as an organization into those things, you're going to see that return on investment because on top of that top performance, you're more likely to have an employee that's going to stay with you for a longer period of time because they recognize, hey, Eric in this organization, right? They're investing in me. They believe in me. They like having me here. They want to see me stay.
yeah, yeah. So mentally, emotionally, physically, we in our business and industry, well, mind, body, soul.
Yes.
So how do you help employees, again, not just check boxes, but really care about them and help them, because we know, as anyone knows, it's common knowledge. If you're connecting mind, body, and soul dots, you are firing on all cylinders.
Absolutely. Yep.
Personally, professionally, you're that amazing ripple effect
Right.
inside your family, inside your organization, etc. So how do you help employees, again, truly show them that you give a shit about them, connect
Yeah.
those really important mind, body, soul dots?
First thing you do is you find out what is important in those areas to your employees. Because the other thing we know is we talk about culture. Hmm. But the other thing we know about organizations is they have a personality. They have a certain makeup about them. And all organizations are different. Some organizations are younger, or they're middle age, or they're older.
Right.
So you've got to talk to these organizations, or you talk to your employees and find out what's important to them under those things. And when you find that out, you create programs that fit those needs. And then you make sure that they're aware of those programs, and you communicate, and you get engagement, and you get that feedback, and you continue to adjust, and you continue to calibrate, and you keep your finger on the pulse of the organization relative to those programs.
Right. So how do you measure mind, body, soul health of an organization, of the employees inside the
Yeah.
organization?
Certainly there's a fair amount of the data that you can look at, right? You can look at participation levels in all of these different
Right.
programs. You can look at things such as turnover, of course, we've talked about that. But you can also look at absenteeism. You can look at your usage of the services, good and bad. So, are we seeing our prescription costs go down? Are we seeing our medical costs as an organization go down as a result of this?
Right.
So, you're looking at a lot of different measures that feed into this, but I can assure
But
you.
what if it doesn't? What if your medical costs aren't going down
Okay.
and they keep going up year after year, and the health I'm just
Yeah.
obviously I'm a little biased to
You
this
are.
one. I don't want to.
We're still going to look at, though, employee engagement. Are they using these programs? Are they staying with us? Are we getting positive feedback that we're doing the things that they want us to do?
Right.
And, we're looking at the numbers, and then we're talking to them. We're saying, Eric, we've done these programs. What has this been useful to you? And I'll use some basic examples. We had this walking program. Eric, was that useful to you? We did this challenge where water, drinking so much water in a day. Was that useful to you?
Right.
So you're trying to stay plugged in to your employees. And maybe it's not every employee, depending on the size of your organization. Maybe it's employee resource groups. And I'm a big proponent of those.
Yeah.
So you've got a cross section of your organization, and you're going and you're asking them, okay, group, these are the things that we're doing. We're seeing this level of engagement. Are you finding these items to be useful? Are you hearing from your colleagues that these things are useful to you and they're making a difference?
Sounds great. So what's a piece of advice for leaders who want to create a culture of giving a shit, uh, but but kind of don't know where to start and maybe feel like they're in this, I don't want to say negative side of
Yeah.
culture, but just it's not as positive and it's not as great as, because HR leaders are just like employees. They want to do an amazing job and they
Right.
want to work for an organization that cares and goes all out and is an amazing, fun place to work and has high retention and low
Mhm.
absenteeism and all that. So let's just say it's just not, it's not all clicking. Where do they start? What do they do?
They start with themselves, and it's a matter of self-reflection. And you've got to ask yourself as a leader, how do I view this workforce? Do I view them as the 5 to 10%, maybe at the most, that are underperforming, that we have the performance issues with, that we have discipline issues with, and so on? Or am I viewing it as the 90 to 95% who show up every day, do their best, are dedicated to this company, are looking for ways to contribute more? So I think you start there and you say, who am I leading as an organization? Who am I leading as a leader? The 90 to 95% that are where I want them to be and we can grow with them? Or am I leading the organization that's the 5 to 10% that probably we need to work on either getting their performance improved or having them exit the organization?
Right.
So I think it really starts there.
Got it. That's good advice.
Yeah.
That's great. Um, so yeah, any other tools in your toolbox that you want to, any actionable tips other than what you just said, or ideas that you have for our audience that have
Well,
worked well for you?
the biggest one, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, is as leaders, get out of your office. That's one of the biggest complaints that I hear about leaders. They're not available to me. They're not accessible to me. I don't see them. They don't come up to me and just say, "Eric, how you doing? Hey, did you go to the Browns game last Sunday? What? How about the Cavs? Man, they're
Right.
12-0."
As
Just
little as water cooler talk,
e-
and
e-
as much as, you want to go for a walk around the building and let's
exactly.
just catch up, or
Exactly. And
yeah,
it takes just a few minutes of your time. And, if you're a leader, I get it. I've been in those roles where I'm super busy and so on. Maybe it's about blocking off your calendar. And okay, every day from 10 to 10:30, I'm gonna do this. Or, on Mondays and Thursdays from 12 to 1, I'm gonna do this. Sometimes, honestly, it's as simple as eating in your lunchroom with your employees. Rather than eating at your desk, you're gonna eat your lunch anyways. Take it in the lunchroom and eat with some of the employees in there. It's amazing those little things, just getting out there and, around the theme of the group, show them that you care. That's the whole podcast. Show your employees that you're actually interested and care and that you remember things that they shared with you. That goes a long way to really building your morale, starting to get into some of the wellness and so on, just showing them that you're interested. And it's amazing the feedback that you're going to receive and the things that you can use.
it's great. That's great. Well, thank you for
Thank you
doing
for
this.
having me.
I think that was a home run initial podcast for sure. So would like to thank the audience too for listening. And if they want to connect with you, it's Kyle,
hrkyle.com. Yep, that's what I was about to
hrkyle.com.
say.
That'll be in our footnotes. Yeah, and reach out to us at Zero Doubt Club for building a better, healthier workplace culture. And again, Kyle, thank you so much.
No,
I
thanks for
appreciate
doing me.
appreciate it.
Yep,
Good to see you.
really appreciate it. Good to see you, man. And for everybody listening, please plug into these guys because not only are they doing some really great work, but they're walking the walk, and that's what we talked about today. You really believe in the things that you're doing here, and that's why I value you as a partner.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you.